Under the burning sun of the Burkinabe savannah, the horizon glowed with amber and gold as a convoy of 3 rugged vehicles stirred clouds of red dust along a winding rural track. In the center car sat Captain Ibrahim Traoré, interim president of Burkina Faso and former revolutionary officer who had seized power in September 2022 after toppling Colonel Damiba. With his beret slightly askew and eyes scanning the weathered documents on his lap, he was on his way to discreetly inaugurate a social program in Maun, his native village, far from the gaze of foreign diplomats and media lenses. Inside the vehicle, silence reigned, broken only by the voice of Youssouf Diallo, his principal bodyguard, a broad-shouldered, sharp-eyed man with a calm intensity born from years in the Special Forces. "We'll be there in 20 minutes, sir," he said without turning. His tone was steady, respectful, alert. Youssouf was known for his unwavering loyalty and meticulous sense of anticipation, a shadow more than a protector. Traoré merely nodded. Unlike many of his predecessors, he favored action over ceremony, fieldwork over podiums. This unscheduled visit was meant to launch an agricultural training and microcredit initiative designed for communities that global institutions had long ignored, villages forgotten by time, but not by him. His speeches often echoed with calls for real sovereignty, and his ideals, modeled after the spirit of Thomas Sankara, stirred a new fire in the youth of the nation. "Have the elders been informed?" Traoré asked, adjusting the crimson beret that had become a symbol of bold leadership. "As you ordered, they believe you're a ministerial envoy. Your identity will remain confidential until we arrive," Youssouf replied, eyes flicking to the surrounding bushland. Traoré's lips curled slightly, satisfied. His humility, his refusal of presidential excess, had earned him unmatched popularity. To many, he represented a break from the past, the promise of genuine independence from lingering colonial shadows. After several hours of rough travel, the convoy halted near a modest village for a rest. Soldiers stretched their limbs as Youssouf drifted from the group, methodically inspecting the perimeter, his sidearm secured at his hip. That's when his phone vibrated. The message was short. $5 million. That's what you'll receive if you give us Traoré's exact location within 48 hours. A new life awaits you. Offshore account already open. Youssouf froze. His brow furrowed. His face, usually unreadable, betrayed a flicker of unease. This wasn't the first attempt to buy his betrayal. Guards of African heads of state were often targets for such tactics. But this amount, it was unheard of. He deleted the message instantly. But the words lingered, carving themselves into the corners of his mind like poison. By nightfall, they reached their destination. The villagers, alerted only moments before to the true identity of their guest, received Traoré with a blend of quiet awe and heartfelt gratitude. He spoke at length with local farmers, listening more than he talked, taking notes in a frayed notebook. After a modest meal, he retired to a small hut prepared for him. As always, Youssouf made a final sweep, then took his position outside, silent and still as the trees. Then came the second message. This time, it bore a photo. His younger sister, Eka. Bound. Gagged. Her eyes wide with terror. A newspaper dated that day rested in her lap, confirming the image's cruel authenticity. "We have your sister. You have 24 hours. No negotiations. Respond yes and wait for instructions." Youssouf felt the ground vanish beneath his feet. 4 years, he had served his nation without compromise, first as a soldier battling jihadist insurgents in the north, then as a shield for a leader he believed in. But Eka, she was all he had left since their parents had been slaughtered during a rebel raid. He had raised her alone, sacrificing every personal comfort to ensure her education. She was now a schoolteacher, a pillar of her community. And she was his soul. That night was endless. Sprawled on a mat in the antechamber of the hut, Youssouf stared into the dark, haunted by 2 images: his sister's terrified face, and the man he had sworn to protect, sleeping peacefully just meters away. At dawn, bloodshot eyes and spine stiff with duty, he entered Traoré's quarters to secure the space before the president awoke. He lingered for a moment, watching the young leader in slumber. "Will you ever forgive me?" he whispered to the shadows. At noon, while Traoré discussed irrigation methods with local elders, Youssouf's phone buzzed again. "Last chance. Coordinates in 1 hour, or you'll never see her again." For the first time in his career, emotion broke through his mask. Traoré, seated across the room, noticed. Their eyes met. And in that instant, Yusuf saw something unexpected in his president's gaze. An uncanny awareness, as if Traoré could sense the storm waging inside the man meant to guard him. Yusuf retreated under a sprawling baobab tree, heart-pounding, and dialed a number he had never forgotten. Osman Kabor, an old comrade from the war in the north, now embedded in military intelligence. Their bond was forged in blood and brotherhood. The message Yusuf sent was encrypted in a private code they developed long ago. The eagle is threatened. The lion cub is in a cage. Need a way out, clean. The reply came fast. Message received. Keep phone active. No replies to unknown numbers. Wait for signal. Returning to his post near the village hall, Yusuf wore a mask of calm. Inside, he was splitting in two, hope that Osman might help, terror that the captors would realize he'd reached out. An hour later, the call came. Osman's tone was grave. Foreign mercenaries. Libyan ties. Likely backed by a mix of mining conglomerates and certain Western intelligence units. Not just an assassination attempt, Yusuf. It's a coup, coordinated, resourced, imminent. Yusuf closed his eyes. And my sister? We believe she's being held near the northern border. Jibwa region. We're prepping a quiet extraction. But you need to stall them. If you give in now, they'll kill her anyway. You and Traoré both. No witnesses. The words confirmed his worst fear. He was never meant to survive this. Neither was she. His only option now was deception. A drone buzzed high overhead. Unmarked. A reconnaissance sweep, perhaps. He gave the alert. Security was heightened. Guards moved with rifles ready. Traoré was ushered to safety. It could be pre-attack recon, Yusuf reported. Traoré nodded calmly. Reinforce security. But we stay the course. We do not bend to intimidation. That night, around a campfire beneath a dome of stars, Traoré spoke of Sankara, Lumumba, Cabral, fathers of African resistance. His voice stirred everyone, even the soldiers. Then, looking directly at Yusuf with piercing intensity, he said, even the most loyal among us face trials that reveal the truth of who we are. May you pass yours with honor. Was it philosophy? Or did Traoré know? That night, after the final security sweep, Yusuf made his decision. He replied to the captors, I accept. But I want proof of life. And confirmation that half the money is deposited. I'll then provide exact coordinates and timing. At the same time, he messaged Colonel Idraogo, Traoré's most trusted commander, warning of an imminent attack. No mention of his sister. Just facts. Highly credible intel suggests an attempt within 72 hours. Recommend covert extraction and decoy op. The plan was bold: fool the mercenaries, lure them to a trap, and save both Traoré and Eka. The next morning, the captors sent a video. Eka, pale and exhausted, pleaded on cue, Please, do what they ask. I'm scared. Help me, Yusuf. The screen blurred with tears. Hidden behind a warehouse, he crumbled, shoulders shaking in silence. For once, the war-hardened protector felt utterly powerless. From afar, Traoré watched him, his eyes reflecting a deep, quiet knowing. At first light, the operation began, precise, invisible, surgically silent. No sirens, no sudden movements. Just trained breath and synchronized signals. A small elite unit, led by Colonel Idraogo himself, moved like shadows through the village, extracting Traoré from his hut without alerting even the sentries. Dressed like a local farmer, a cloth loosely veiling his features, the president climbed into an old, rust-rimmed Toyota pickup and vanished down a little-used path that twisted through the dense brush and out into open terrain, far from prying eyes. In his place, an officer of similar build, trained for impersonation, took the president's spot within the main convoy. Yusuf, deliberately excluded from the extraction, continued to play his role. It was vital for the enemy to believe he was still under their thumb. To the mercenaries, he sent exact coordinates, but not of Traoré's true route. Instead, he pointed them 3 kilometers north, to a choke point where a bridge crossed a dry riverbed, a place that looked like the weak link in the security detail. There, hidden beneath the thickets and among the rocks, Burkinabe special forces lay in wait, camouflaged with near-invisible precision. "The president will leave at 10 a.m. sharp," Yusuf typed. "Heading north to Duu. Security will be light. Some officers were recalled urgently to the capital. The bridge at these coordinates is the most vulnerable point." The response came instantly. "Message received. Your sister will be released after confirmation of the hit. The money will be transferred as promised." He knew it was a lie. The moment they got what they wanted, his sister, and he, would vanish. Loose ends. He had no choice but to continue the charade, counting on Idraogo's precision and on fate's fragile grace. At 10:15 a.m., the rumble of approaching engines shattered the stillness. 2 military-style SUVs appeared, moving with a deliberate, calculated rhythm. 6 men disembarked. Heavy gear. Camouflage. Faces masked. Their movements betrayed elite training, cold, confident, lethal. They scanned the area through advanced optics, unaware that their every step was mirrored in the crosshairs of elite snipers nestled among the trees and ridges. A military drone, Burkinabe, undetectable at that altitude, fed live footage to a command post 10 kilometers away. Yusuf, watching from a concealed position, gripped his binoculars tightly, sweat soaking through his shirt. Everything now hinged on seconds. If the mercenaries sensed the ruse too soon, they could order his sister's execution. If the ambush failed, the president's life might be lost, and his own role exposed. He would be remembered not as a hero, but as the man who almost sold his country. Colonel Idraogo's voice crackled through the radio. "Stand by, execute." Like spirits rising from the earth, the special forces erupted from their cover, weapons drawn, shouting orders with sharp authority. "On the ground! Drop your weapons!" The mercenaries froze for a heartbeat, then opened fire. The savannah exploded in a hail of bullets and grit. Dust rose like smoke from the floor of the bushland. A sharp, blistering fight erupted, brief but brutal. One young Burkinabe soldier, fresh from the academy, was caught in open ground after a hidden IED obliterated his cover. Yusuf saw him fall, exposed, vulnerable, afraid. Without thinking, he broke from his position, sprinting across the kill zone, bullets snapping past like angry wasps. He threw himself forward, tackled the young soldier behind a boulder, shielding him with his body. A shot tore through his shoulder, searing pain through his chest, but he stayed upright, teeth clenched, vision blurred. He drew his sidearm and returned fire with his good hand, methodical and lethal, until the last threat was silenced. When the gunfire ceased, for mercenaries had been captured alive, 2 lay dead. Medics moved in, tending to the injured. Blood, dust, heat, it all blurred. As Yusuf was lifted toward a medical vehicle, his shoulder hastily bandaged, he heard one of the captured mercenaries mutter in a thick, foreign accent, half Slavic, half Mediterranean. "More will come. Your president disturbs powerful men. This is just the beginning." The words sank like stones into his mind as consciousness faded, carried off by the hemorrhage and the crushing fatigue of 48 sleepless hours. His last thought was the image of the soldier he'd saved, watching him with wide, reverent eyes, unaware of the storm that had preceded his act of courage. 3 days later, Yusuf awoke in the high-security wing of the Ouagadougou Military Hospital, his shoulder wrapped in white, and his body aching. At his bedside sat Ibrahim Traoré, silent, composed, thumbing through a well-worn copy of The Wretched of the Earth by Frantz Fanon, a book he often quoted in speeches. "Excellence," Yusuf whispered, wincing from the pain. Traoré raised a hand, gently. "Don't speak. You've done enough." The silence between them was heavy, filled with the quiet hum of machines and the distant murmur of hallway voices. The weight of unspoken truths settled like dust in the room. Then the president reached out, took Yusuf's hand, and spoke softly, words that would echo in the former soldier's memory for the rest of his days. "You faced the worst enemy a man can know, fear. Not the fear of death. Any soldier learns to master that. But the fear of losing what he loves most. That is the true test of loyalty." "You knew," Yusuf murmured, astonished. Traoré nodded. "Our intelligence intercepted the messages soon after you received them. I gave the order to let you make your choice. I needed to know if my trust was not misplaced." Yusuf's eyes welled. Shame rose like bile. He reached for a folded envelope on his bedside table, His resignation letter, requested from a nurse during a fleeting moment of lucidity. I don't deserve this post. I wavered. I considered betrayal. Even for a moment, Traoré took the envelope, examined it briefly, then tore it into pieces and dropped them into the trash. Request denied. You are more valuable now than ever. What you've lived through will make you stronger. The perfect man does not exist, Yusuf. Only those who choose the right path when standing at the edge of the abyss. The days that followed saw a storm of activity ripple through the Burkinabe intelligence community. Within fortified headquarters, far from the public eye, experts dissected every device, every note, every encrypted file recovered from the captured mercenaries. What they uncovered was not just an assassination plot, but a global web, an intricate conspiracy that stretched across continents and into the halls of economic power. The weapons, the satellite phones, the offshore financial trails, they all pointed to a multinational alliance. Western mining conglomerates threatened by Traoré's new gold extraction laws, intelligence services from countries that had grown uneasy with his Pan-African rhetoric, and private military contractors operating in the gray zones of legality. This was not a warning shot. It was the first volley of a long campaign to restore what they called stability, and what the people increasingly recognized as control. In the presidential war room, sunlight filtered through blast-resistant glass as Traoré listened in silence to the grim briefing delivered by Colonel Lomé, the head of intelligence. A seasoned man, fiercely loyal and immune to flattery, Lomé held a tablet in one hand, scrolling through intercepted messages and international bank transfers. We've confirmed the sponsors, sir, he said. A consortium of European mining interests, political influencers with long-standing ties to post-colonial networks, and, though I won't name them aloud, foreign agencies whose fingerprints are all over this, if you know where to look. Their mission was clear: destabilize the presidency, neutralize key allies, and reassert control over strategic assets. Traoré, dressed in a plain military fatigues devoid of rank or medals, stared at the documents spread across the mahogany table: complex org charts, bank records in 5 currencies, audio transcripts. Among the names, some were instantly recognizable: figures celebrated in international forums, heads of multinational think tanks, businessmen knighted for African development initiatives. And the kidnapping of Yusuf Diallo's sister? He asked, his voice low and controlled. Lomé didn't hesitate. Planned with chilling precision. The operation had been in the works for months. They had compiled deep psychological profiles of your entire inner circle. Diallo was tagged as your most loyal protector, therefore the most valuable to corrupt. The abduction of his sister was the first domino. The room fell silent. Traoré's eyes drifted to a large wall map of Africa pinned with colored tacks, one for each suspected point of foreign interference. He studied it for a moment, then made a decision that sent shockwaves through his inner circle. Prepare an international press conference. Noon tomorrow. We reveal everything. A flurry of protest erupted from his advisors. Mr. President, that's unwise. The diplomatic blowback. We'll lose every investment deal still on the table. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, visibly shaken, pleaded, some of these contracts are vital. They hold the economy together. If you name names, the sanctions. Traoré silenced them with a quiet tap of his hand against the table. It is precisely this silence, these fragile contracts, these veiled threats, that have kept us enslaved. For too long, we have whispered in fear of the storm. I say we become the storm. Our strength lies now in truth, and in the solidarity that truth will awaken across Africa. 3 days later, under the highest security protocol the nation had ever deployed, the conference hall at the presidential palace was filled beyond capacity. Journalists from every major global outlet occupied the front rows. Behind them, local reporters, students, activists, and citizens packed in shoulder to shoulder, their faces taut with expectation. In a hospital bed miles away, Yusuf watched on a small screen, heart pounding. His body had begun to heal, but his conscience still bled. He feared his name might be dragged into the open, misinterpreted, rebranded as weakness by the public he had tried so hard to serve in silence. Then Traoré began to speak. Unwavering. Like a judge reciting a sentence already written in history. He laid out every fact, methodically, without sensationalism. Projected on the screen behind him were classified memos, audio files, video stills from the ambush. Not once did he mention the countries involved. He let the evidence speak. These destabilization efforts are not new, he declared. But their coordination and technological sophistication reveal the magnitude of what we face. This is no longer about Burkina Faso alone. This is about our collective right, as Africans, to chart our economic and political future without foreign puppeteers pulling the strings. The room hung on every word. And then, a question came. From a BBC correspondent. "Mr. President," she said, "the documents suggest one of your bodyguards was approached, may have even cooperated briefly with the mercenaries. Yet he remains in your confidence. How do you explain this contradiction?" A murmur rose in the hall. Cameras zoomed in. In the hospital, Yusuf's heart nearly stopped. Traoré took a breath. "The true measure of loyalty is not the absence of temptation," he said, voice clear and resolute. "It is the ability to resist that temptation when everything you love is placed at risk." Captain Yusuf Diallo did not betray this nation. He risked his life and that of his family to outmaneuver those who wished to enslave us. He faced an impossible choice, and found a path that saved both. That is not betrayal. That is courage guided by conscience. And that is the future of this continent. In the following days, Yusuf's name spread like wildfire across the continent, on radio waves, university panels, WhatsApp threads, and newspaper front pages. The man who refused 5 million became a symbol, not of martyrdom, but of moral clarity. Students held forums on ethics. Social media swelled with tributes. A television network in Dakar announced a documentary, The Price of Dignity. But Yusuf stayed silent. He turned down interviews, rejected commercial offers. He returned to duty. Slowly, quietly. When fully recovered, he took on a new role, at Traoré's request. He began training the next generation of presidential guards. But more than weapons, he taught them discipline of a different kind. How to detect manipulation, how to resist compromise, how to stay unbought in a world that sells everything. Elsewhere, in the corridors of power where the air was thick with ambition and whispers, a seasoned general, one known for his veiled opposition to Traoré and his nostalgic loyalty to the old order, saw in Yusuf's rising stature an opportunity. Quietly, he sowed doubt in elite military circles, implying that Diallo had only changed sides when he realized the mercenaries' plot was failing. He painted him not as a hero, but as a calculating opportunist who played both sides to save his skin. But Yusuf, ever vigilant, had seen this coming. He had saved everything. Voice messages, encrypted exchanges, financial trails. And he had shared them only with Colonel Lomé and a trusted judicial magistrate. When the general's insinuations reached a dangerous momentum, a discreet arrest was made. No spectacle. No press leaks. Just a silent, precise removal from command, followed by the unveiling of hard evidence, records of meetings with foreign diplomats involved in the plot, offshore accounts opened under false names, intercepted calls where he referred to Traoré as a necessary sacrifice. The message was clear. The days of invisible sabotage were over. The Burkina Faso of now had no room for ghosts from its past. In the aftermath, a wave of institutional renewal surged. Reforms were accelerated. Security protocols refined. And trust in Traoré's administration, far from shaken, was deepened. Because the people had not seen vengeance. They had seen justice. Unyielding. Ethical. Meanwhile, Eka Diallo stood at the helm of her new mission. Inaugurated with quiet dignity in the heart of a once-neglected district of Ouagadougou, the Centre Eka Diallo pour la protection de victimes de trafic et d'enlèvement opened its doors beneath a banner that shimmered in the sunlight. Its walls blended traditional Burkinabe design with clean, modern lines, a space born not from charity, but from conviction. Financed by African funds, independent, accountable, and proud. Inside, Eka, now its director, greeted the first families arriving. Survivors. Mothers. Children. Women who had been sold, hidden, exchanged like cargo. Men returned broken from ransom prisons. She welcomed them with eyes that had known fear, and a voice strengthened by purpose. "We do not treat victims," she told a visiting delegation from the African Union. "We cultivate resistance. Each person who walks through our door is not merely someone to heal. They are someone to empower." Their pain is the seed of a new continent. In 2 years, what had started as a personal act of survival had grown into a movement. Over 50 hostages rescued. Hundreds counseled. Legal cases launched. New policies proposed at the national level. What was once a scar had become a torch. Just a few kilometers away, in a repurposed military compound humming with new life, Yusuf had founded something equally rare, the Ethical Security Academy, the first of its kind on the continent. There, beneath the rising flag each morning, young recruits from across West Africa stood at attention, not just to train in tactics or strategy, but to study ethics, political history, and the moral paradoxes of power. Traoré himself had helped shape the curriculum. The true guardian, Yusuf often told his students, is not the one who holds the line with a gun. It is the one who resists the corrosion of the soul. Security begins with integrity. Skeptics had laughed. At first. But then the AU asked to adapt the model. Then Senegal sent observers. Then Ghana requested a delegation. And suddenly, the academy was more than a school, it was a blueprint. By then, Yusuf had earned a nickname whispered with reverence, Le Gardien Incorruptible. He dismissed it. One humid afternoon, a grand event unfolded across the capital. Coinciding with the summit of the African Union on sovereignty and continental security, it brought presidents, ministers, civil society leaders, and ordinary citizens to the newly renovated Palais de Sports, a place that once hosted colonial exhibitions, now transformed into a sanctuary of African self-determination. Traoré stood on stage before thousands, live across the continent. Today, he said, we do not honor a warrior of conventional battles. We honor a man of conscience. Faced with the cruelest dilemma a human can endure, between family and nation, he refused to accept that those were opposing paths. He forged a third, the path of loyalty with vision and courage tempered by love. He called Yusuf forward. The crowd stood, applauded, wept, cheered. Some waved signs. Others wore shirts that read in bold block letters, 5 million? No. My soul is not for sale. Yusuf climbed the steps slowly, uniform crisp, gaze steady, face unreadable. He did not smile. He did not bask. He simply bowed. In the days that followed, thousands of letters flooded in. From villages, cities, from far corners of the continent, from children, elders, mayors, farmers, students. I named my son Yusuf, wrote a mother in Senegal, so that he may grow with your values. I refused a bribe, said a Tanzanian civil servant, because I thought of your choice. You taught us that loyalty isn't silence, it's courage, read a message from a Nigerian law student. Among them all, one small envelope stood out. Inside, a child's crayon drawing. A man in uniform, shielding both a family and a flag. The note beneath it read, in shaky letters, When I grow up, I want to be like you. Yusuf had it framed. It now hung behind his desk. Silent, watchful, eternal. At the newly renamed Thomas Sankara University, once a quiet campus on the outskirts of Ouagadougou, the atmosphere had transformed into something electric. The conference on African sovereignty and ethical leadership was drawing to a close. Students, dignitaries, veterans, and visionaries filled the grand hall, not with formality, but with something deeper, hope. President Ibrahim Traoré stepped to the podium. The applause died down into a silence thick with expectation. Behind him, near the entrance, stood a modest bronze statue, a soldier without a rifle, standing tall with calm eyes. At its base were 5 simple words, Loyalty cannot be bought. Traoré's voice carried gently but clearly. Africa does not need superheroes. It needs ordinary men and women capable of extraordinary choices. He turned briefly toward Yusuf, sitting humbly among a group of young cadets. Captain Diallo did not just save a president. He saved a belief, the belief that an African can say no. No to corruption. No to fear. No to submission. He paused. We need more Yusufs. Not for their perfection, but for their courage to rise above their flaws. People who doubt, who suffer, who resist, and who teach others to do the same. The hall rose to its feet. Thunderous applause shook the room, not in celebration of a man, but in celebration of a shared ideal. Outside, the The sky over Ouagadougou burned with the golden flame of the setting sun. Across the continent, the speech was broadcast live, into living rooms, into mobile phones, into late-night gatherings where people huddled around radios or projectors. From Lusaka to Lagos. From Accra to Addis. From Brazzaville to Banjul. And beyond. Some watched in silence. Some with tears. Some raised a fist. Others simply whispered to those beside them, "This is what it means to stand for something." And now, if you've made it this far, if this story has stirred something in you, wherever you are in the world, we'd love to hear from you. Please, tell us kindly and proudly. From which country are you watching or listening to this story? Don't forget to subscribe.